Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Rise up! Team rise! Rise up! Team rise!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. Best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals, and recording the second show of the week. Actually, jumping the gun a little bit because of our schedule is with Seth Cox from AvengeTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. We thought that we were going to push our draft prep shows to next week, and then I calendared things out. And yeah, we kind of needed to do one today, Seth. So here we are, the first of what's going to be probably 7 player preview shows before we hit our yearly mock draft. But, it's officially draft season now, Seth. We are from today 4 weeks away. We're 4 weeks away, and we are about to turn the page into April. So it's exciting, and we get to talk about what we think the Cardinals are going to do, players that we should know, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, this is an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun, man. And I like getting the extra kind of time in and not having to cram, because I think what you and I are going to see over these next 3 weeks, or technically 4 weeks, but we're really only going to preview for 3 weeks, right? Like, I think what we're going to see here is that it's going to be a lot of options. I was talking to some buddies, Jess, and guys that I trust more than anybody, Justin being one of them, Kyle Posey another, and then we have a third buddy that is kind of off the grid, but we talk to about scouting stuff and player evaluations and things like that. And really this is the year where if you have as many of those picks in that like 20 to 70 range, you're going to feel really good about what you have, because there's just so much talent in that area, and you can just enjoy those guys, and they're going to be here. Here's what the problem with this class is, and we'll get into it more as we go through it. There's not a lot of all pro types.
Yeah, I was listening to the First Draft podcast, and they were talking about, last year's had some stars, very top heavy, but the depth wasn't great. This draft, you don't have the high end talent at the top, but it's full of good NFL talent potentially.
Right. But there's going to be a lot of like 8-10 year start. Like the way I explained it is, there's going to be a ton of guys like Dalvin Tomlinson, like Josh Sweat, that are impact, really talented players that maybe go to a Pro Bowl here or there, but they're not going to be the guy. They're not going to be Myles Garrett. There's not going to those guys aren't going, and that's okay. Everybody talks about that Eagles, and don't get me wrong, the Eagles were loaded this year. They were a very talented team this year, but when you also look at the end of the season and you see, the players and all of that stuff, it wasn't like you're talking about a team with, 12 all pros on it, right? Like They were a very good team. They had a lot of talent. They had some all pros at important positions, but for the most part, they're a bunch of really good football players. And so that's kind of what this is you're finding guys that fit what you need and what you want to do. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have all pro talent, but two of their all pros this year were free agents, right? Saquon Barkley and Zach Bond.
Yeah.
So it's not always going to come through the draft. And this is a draft where you can legitimately nail down 3 or 4 starters in the first 4 rounds, because there's not much separating a guy, that you'll have in, that's maybe edge 4 and edge 9, right? There's not going to be a whole lot separating a guy like Michael Williams and a guy like Josiah Stewart. And so that's what's good about this draft. And we're going to talk about the edges. So I just threw 2 edge names out there, right? But we're going to talk about the edges and what they bring and things like that today. But that's what's exciting about this draft. If anything else, there's not they're outside of Abdul Carter, right? There's probably not a guy that's going to be a yearly all pro type, but there are guys that you can stack this team with that will make the Arizona Cardinals better.
It's 100%. And yes, that is what Seth alluded to. Instead of what we've done in many years past, where we end up with like a 2-hour episode talking about defensive prospects, another 2-hour episode on offensive, we're going to piecemeal it. We're going to go 1 or 2 positions. Now in this edition of the show, we're going to delve into we're going to touch on the projected win totals that came out on ESPN Bet. We'll touch on those just a little bit before we jump into the edge class, and we'll kind of break it down into first round guys, especially since the Cardinals right in the middle. There's a number of guys who could be available, day 2 guys to know, and then some day 3 sleepers. So let's start with the win totals, and I don't know, Seth. I don't remember when I did projected win totals. I guess I could look it up. Projected win totals for 2024 that came out in March. Oh, okay. So it was like literally the same day as last year. But yesterday on Wednesday was ESPN Bet that came out with those projected win totals, and I think did any other sports book do that? Because that's the only one I've seen so far.
FanDuel has it. I just looked since you brought it up, and they have the Cardinals at the same thing. It's funny. Their odds are flipped.
Are they? Oh, really? Interesting. So that's the one thing. Like the win totals are interesting. As I was telling you offline, the one thing I didn't love about ESPN Bet's line, so that their projected win totals, and I know the purpose of it was to make sure everyone had a hook, so it was at a 0.5. But as a result, you have some really unbalanced odds. Like you've got lots that are on one side minus 140 and shorter, and then the other side is like anywhere to even money to plus 125. When if you're passionate about the plus side, that could be for a fantastic bet. But for the most part, it makes betting the slightly favored side a little less delightful, less appealing. At the top of the list are 4 teams that you would probably expect. You've got the Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, and Eagles, who have the highest projected win total at 11.5. That said, only the Bills have minus odds on the over, while everyone else of those 3 have minus odds on the under, which I thought was kind of interesting. But let's talk about the Cardinals, who are set at 8.5 wins, with the over at minus 135. 130 at minus 130, and then the under is even money plus 100. And before we go that seems about perfect, considering 2 years ago they had the lowest projected win total at 4.5. Last year they were 6.5. They exceeded that, and this year And kind of last year, what we felt like at 6.5, it made sense based on what national perception was. That best case scenario, they were a team that would compete for the postseason, maybe not make it, which has ended up what they were doing. Took the over. You felt real good about that. And this time, 8.5. Based on what we see on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis from the Cardinals, they were an 8-win team this year. Their offense should be at least as good, like on paper, as they were last year, and their defense should be significantly or markedly better. And so, thinking that they can do over 8.5 seems like an easy bet, but that also is at -130 a slightly less appealing one.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is you go to FanDuel and over 8.5 plus 110 right now. Under 8.5 is -130. So
Well,
it really just depends. Like that. That's one of the things that certain degenerate type people. I'm not going to point fingers, but like that's something that they do, man. They shop. They shop these things and they say, okay, where do I get the best odds? I can tell you. A group I follow are really good at that because I am a FanDuel only guy, and they shop out ESPN Bet, they shop out MGM, Bet MGM, Caesars, like all of the sports books, man. They're on all of them, and it seems exhausting to me. I'm like, oh, this is too much work. I can't do this. But yeah, man. I mean, you look at it, and you look at a team that just missed last year, right? Was right on the precipice. We can go back and relitigate and rehash every game. But literally from game one, right? They blew a lead to the Bills. They blew a couple chances against the Lions. Obviously, they blew the Vikings game and blew opportunities in the Panthers and Rams game. I mean, that's 4 extra wins right there. And again, we're not saying they're going to be a 13-win team. Like that's not, or yeah, 13-win or 12-win team. Sorry, that's not what Jess and I are saying. But they had those opportunities, and that's kind of how you have to look at it, right? Like those were the opportunities they had last year, and they just didn't make them. So now this year, coming into it, ideally you've improved, right? You've improve those areas that were issues, if that's what we want to call them, and now you feel like this is a team that moving forward that you can really see this group improve and get to that 9-10 win plateau and be a playoff team. And we've said it all along, barring injury, a substantial injury, that's kind of what they have to do, right? Like there's no more excuses, there's no more time. That's what they have to do now if they want to continue to on the goodwill that they've built for some fans. I know some fans are just done. They're like, hey, they blew it last year. I didn't even want to, they should have been in the playoffs and they blew it. Like, I don't care anymore. And that's fine. That's 100%. That's
an interesting way to fan, but
right. That's your prerogative. You do you. There's nothing wrong with that. But, as Jess and I have tried to explain and point out ad nauseum for this organization in general, that's just not how this organization works. It's not. I mean, it never has been. They've continually, spun through coaches. They've continually spun through quarterbacks. They've continually spun through a lot of personnel and had the same result. So to look at this and go, oh, well, last year wasn't good enough. I don't disagree. It would have been much more enjoyable if they would have just ended up where we all were hoping and thinking they could get. But at least they were relevant for a full season.
That's 100% the right. Now, like going back to that win total, if you're telling me FanDuel is plus 110 on the over, 100%, I'm making that bet. I might, I might just hit on that right, but like at minus 130. Oh, but I feel confident right now at this point of the season, especially now. Looking at that, now's the best time to kind of invest in that because you probably won't get better odds on the over than you have right now. Especially if you think that the Cardinals are going to be better than an 8-win team than they were a year ago. Like we thought this team could have been a 10-11 win team, and they should have been. All they had to do really was, they needed to beat the Seahawks once, and they should have beat the Panthers. That was dumb. So they should have had 10 wins. This team should be a 10-11 win team this year. Like if things go the way they're supposed to do. And with that said,
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I think we'll delve more into the win totals once we clear out the draft and we have kind of some more clarity. We can talk more about that. So I don't want to waste too much time on that one. We want to dive more into the edge class. And if we're looking schedule, what we're kind of looking at over the next several weeks, we're going to go, we're not going to do it in a particular order like offense. Like traditionally, like when I run through things, it'll be quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, offensive line on offense. Then you go inside out. So you go defensive line, edge, linebacker, cornerback, safety is how I do things. Instead, we're going to go early on the most positions of need. So we're going to talk edge in this show. Next week, we're going to do one on the defensive line, the D tackles, and one on the O-line. We're going to do one on receivers. And then the last two shows the week before the draft are going to be two positions each. So linebacker, tight end, and then quarterback, running back, and then maybe some specialists. And then leading into the week of the draft, we will do our mock draft on Tuesday. Hammer that out, and then you can make fun of us for how well or not well we pick things out. So let's start with the edge class. And what we want to do is break it down into kind of the first round guys, the day 2 guys, and then day 3 sleepers. And you mentioned Abdul Carter. I'm going to try and off the top of my head, the guys that I think will be first round, more or less locks. And you're looking at Abdul Carter, Penn State. You're looking at Jalen Walker, Georgia. Michael Williams, Georgia. Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M. And is there one more that I'm not sure, but then you've got the mix of James Pierce and Nick Scorton. Would you say that probably 4 to 5 is what we're looking at in the first round?
Yeah, I think so, man. I mean, you look at this group, and that's kind of like I said earlier, there's not necessarily the guy out after Abdul Carter. I mean, Abdul Carter is a freak. He's an absolute. He's going to be an absolute star if he stays healthy. The idea
that
of
is
him
a concern. That is a concern.
100%.
Had the shoulder. Now he had the foot. Now he's not going to work out at his pro day. So
the idea of him and Myles Garrett together, he doesn't have to be the guy, right?
That's true.
So like that's the nice thing. But yeah, I mean, after that, you've got a lot of intrigue. Shamar Stewart was the darling of the combine, and there's literally no denying that he is one of the freakiest athletes we've ever seen coming into the NFL draft. I mean, and if you're listening to this and you're listening to us talk about this, I assume you follow RAS and relative athletic scoring that was developed by Kent Lee Platt. And he does a great job and give him a follow on Twitter and things of that nature. But Shamar Stewart's RAS profile, so it's out of a possible 10. He literally got a 9.99. The only thing he didn't score above average in was weight, because he dropped weight to get to 267. I mean, he is legitimately the pinnacle of athletic specimen. He is the best scored athlete in at the position that they've had. But I mean, there's a couple red flags. I think the first one being he didn't do any agility testing. So we don't have those numbers that we like to get where about guys who how do they bend, how do they dip, how do they, change direction. That wasn't something he did. The next one is obviously there's
Production.
zero production, Jess. I mean, just
1.5 sacks, 3 straight years. And for a guy that's your, first round draft pick, that to me, that it might be the biggest risk. I think of the guys that we mentioned as first round guys, wouldn't you say that Stewart is probably the biggest risk of that group? Oh, I forgot to mention Mike Green. Mike Green is the other guy. So that puts it at 5. I'll put Mike Green in that group. So we got Abdul Carter, we've got Jalen Walker, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, and Mykal Williams. As I think those are 5 probably first round locks. Wouldn't you say that Stewart is the biggest risk because he didn't show the production on the field?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. So, you and I were talking about it before, and I don't have a strong opinion on Shamar Stewart because of how this class is. I have guys that I prefer. We'll talk about that shortly, but I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I have guys I prefer over Shamar Stewart. Let's put it that way.
My question about Shamar, because he played at a bigger weight, like he was listed, wasn't he listed like 281 when he played for Texas A&M, and which for me made it kind of an interesting thing because that brings me back to LJ Collier, Darius Robinson. Collier who was drafted out of TCU as an edge and never really found his place, but he was 280, 290, and he's a decent interior guy. Darius Robinson played on the edge, but the Cardinals view him as an interior guy. Do you think he's going to play in the NFL at 250, 260, 270, or is he going to kind of default up to the 280-ish? And if he were to be bigger, would you worry about his fit on the outside?
It's going to be interesting to watch. I think he's a guy that projects similarly, athletically, obviously, not production-wise, to Myles Garrett. I mean, that's the closest thing we have athletically, specimen-wise. And so Myles came in, played in the 260s, low 270s, and I think he's back up into the 280s, if I remember right. So, I mean, over time, he'll develop back into that, and he'll get to a comfortable spot for him. I think with how Texas A&M used their defensive ends, they wanted him bigger so he could be a guy that played where he played along the line, and that just caused those issues. So yeah, I mean, man, it's an interesting one. It really is, because I just don't I truly don't know what the answer is. Like he's a guy that I look at and I go, I don't know.
Well, and here's another factor, because the Cardinals, with the 3-4 that they run, that Fangio, their edges often drop. I believe I ran across this on social media. You know how many times Shamar Stewart dropped into coverage at Texas A&M?
Probably not.
I believe it was absolutely 0. So it's athletically, it shows he could do it, but because he's never done it, I think that might be a concern for that. I did have a question going back to Abdul Carter really quick. How good do you think Abdul Carter is? He's not Myles Garrett good.
No.
Is he Micah Parsons?
I think he could be on. I think he could be on the Parsons spectrum. He's got all pro. He's the one guy I would say could be an all pro from this class. I'm not going to say would be, but he's the one guy that I could see being an all pro, because he is just so athletically gifted and just then on top of that, he does have some production. He does have all the other things. So, he's the one guy that I would bet on. But he's not head and shoulders above anybody that's come out over the last several years in terms of sack guys or guys that you're like, oh, this is who you got to have, or this is the guy you need. Because I think there are guys in this, or that we've seen in the last several years, that are better, but I would still think that he'd be, I'd have to go back and look at every draft, but I think he'd be a top 10 guy in most drafts. Like he's probably somewhere on that, like Will Anderson to Micah Parsons spectrum. So, and Will Anderson's had a nice start to his career, 2 seasons, 11, he hit 11 sacks this year, was in that top 15 defensive player of the year type thing. 1 defensive rookie of the year, didn't make a Pro Bowl this year, which was interesting. Right. But I think he's that good of a prospect that he can be, at that level. I just, I'm not sure his like base or whatever you want to call it, is it like a Kayvon Thibodeau where he's good, but obviously, not top 5 overall where they picked him. But of course, Thibodeau had 11.5 sacks his second season. So are people really going to nitpick that? I mean, but I do think Abdul Carter's a game changer.
Jalen Walker. So between Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, do you think any of those guys go top 10? I've seen Shamar Stewart creep into top 10. I've seen Jalen Walker there. Do you think just going back, do you think either of those guys have a chance to go top 10?
I think they do, man. And here's why. Because if you look at the top 10, there's kind of like one consensus, right? It's right now it's Cam Ward first overall. Yes. From there there's, I would say, 2 other consensus. I guess
Mason Graham's going top 5, it feels like.
Right.
Will Campbell feels like probably going Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham.
There's 3 other that I feel like are locks, right? Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham. They feel like they're locked into the top 5. Shadur Sanders, Armand Mimbu,
Will Campbell, all those
Will
have.
Campbell.
There's some speculate, like who knows, especially Campbell, who felt like a lock in the top 5. His arm length might push him down. We'll see. But even, dude, I've seen Tet McMillan from U of A projected in the top 5. So that's true.
So like, I feel like outside of Ward, Carter, Hunter, and Graham, and by the way, just because those are the guys that we feel like are pretty locked in, and top 5 might even be strong. It might be top 7 only, but we feel like those guys are top 10 locks. We'll call it top 10, right? They're locked into the top 10, barring off-field injuries situation. But who are the other 6 guys, right? And so you mentioned it, Jalen Walker. I've seen him projected anywhere from 8th to making it to the Cardinals and past the Cardinals. Shamar Stewart, I've seen him projected as high as 9 to the Saints. I've seen him again making it past the Cardinals. So
into the 20s, I've seen Stewart into the 20s.
Right. So I don't think that there's really anybody that has a good feeling for that edge group. But I will say this. If you gave me a choice between taking Jalen Walker and Ashton Jeanty, who I think is a very good running back, I'm taking Jalen Walker because of how good this running back class is.
Yeah, that makes sense. So about Jalen Walker, who is people, I'm not going to say that he's a conversion guy because he did play quite a bit from the edge, right? So to say that he's another guy that you're playing out of position, would you say that he's probably more than say like a Hassan Reddick playing out of position. You have a guy who is an edge who can play linebacker. He started at linebacker. He can go up the edge, but at 6'1", 243, just a little bit on the short side, but he's athletic. And if you look at the tape, what people say is that on that Georgia defense, if there was somebody who stood out, it was Walker. And so like he might be off the board before then, but you think about it, especially the way the Cardinals utilize their edge guys, having someone who is comfortable playing backwards as well as playing forward, he'd be kind of perfect, wouldn't he? Unless they're kind of set on a size. But at the same time, they got DJ Ojulari, who, what is he, 6'2", 240 something, or two, like, and then they were playing Dennis Garnick. And so you look like, hey, Garnick was already in place. They drafted Ojulari. And so if they draft a guy like Ojulari, you're thinking, okay, the guy with the athletic profile that Jalen Walker has, with his ability to rush the quarterback, make plays, and also to be able to play a little bit in space, that feels like a perfect pick for the Cardinals, assuming he's around.
Yeah, and I've
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games, all for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
heard from people that are like, oh, I don't want to do the hybrid thing again. And I'm like, I get it, but it's a different beast with him. He's not your hybrid in the sense of like, oh, we're taking a off-ball linebacker and teaching. Like, he's a guy that, again, we're going to bring up Micah Parsons, and there's not a comparison, but was utilized similarly to Micah Parsons, right? Where he did rush the passer consistently. And he's a guy that's been a standout for this Georgia defense forever. I mean, forever, man. Like, this is a guy that is one of the best players on one of the best defenses in college football consistently. And you look at it, and he's a pure guy in the sense of he took 200 snaps as a pass rusher, or on the as an outside linebacker, like rush and outside linebacker, and he took 258 snaps as an off-ball linebacker. So, like, this wasn't a guy that they were like situationally, like they were using him as a chess piece because he can do both. By the way, the year before, his sophomore season as a 19-year-old, really, because he didn't turn 20 until 21 this year until February. So he played as a true 20-year-old last year, as a true 19-year-old the year before. He played 130 snaps as an edge rusher and 68 as an off-ball linebacker. So, like, this is a dude who's done it consistently.
It's not a conversion,
right?
He's truly hybrid,
right? He is truly that, and even like going into his freshman year as an 18-year-old at Georgia. Think about this: like 18 years old for the Georgia Bulldogs, and he's being asked to play two positions because that's how good he is. That's on a national championship team. Like, this is a dude that's a special, unique talent. And if people go, I want a guy that plays off ball, or I want a guy that plays edge, I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me. But that shouldn't detract you from why you like Jalen Walker, or why you wouldn't pick Jalen Walker, because he's a guy that has not just done both, but excelled at both at what is the highest level in college. I mean, this is a guy that is he's just a unique cat in terms of playing ability and style, and he's just gotten progressively better every season as he's gotten more snaps.
Michael Williams, played opposite him, didn't pop as much, but if you want a guy who looks the part, who's built the part, 6'5", 260, 34.5-inch arms, basically. He's got length, he's got size, he's got athleticism. He didn't have more than 5 sacks, but he had 4.5, and 5. And last year he was slowed. He dealt with an ankle injury. He didn't miss a ton of time, but he's also a guy, he's just your prototypical edge guy. But probably he's not he didn't pop off the tape like Walker. Like how comfortable would you, he seems consensus round 1. And I think
and here's what
physically he matches exactly what the Cardinals like.
Well, and here's what people are going to hate. He's awesome against the run. Just absolutely stellar against the run. That's where he excelled, and that's what he was asked to do. Just think about this, okay? So, again, you mentioned the nagging ankle injury this year. Probably slowed him down more than he's willing to admit, but he's a guy that, never really asked to come out, didn't ask to bail out on his team. This year was the first year that the majority of his snaps were at that edge position, but he played it in different ways. He played straight up, over the last man on the line of scrimmage. He played outside shade of that guy. He played as a rush outside backer, but most of his snaps were head up or outside shade of the left tackle. That's where most of his snaps happened this year. 142 to be exact. And then you go back to last year in 2023, just this dude, same thing, just under 200 snaps, 190 snaps, just head up or just outside shade of the left tackle. Like, he was asked to occupy the supposed to be best offensive lineman for the other team every game. Like, he wasn't allowed to be the freelancer. He wasn't. And so that's the thing, is like guys like him, Shamar Stewart. I'll say this, Michael Williams did exactly what he was asked to do by Georgia and did it fantastically. He's not flashy. He wasn't flashy. He was never asked to go be the guy that goes and gets all the glory. So we don't know if that's his game or if he can do it. We don't know what he can do when he is turned loose, because he was just never asked to do it. And that quite frankly is okay. It doesn't mean anything negative about him. I think the biggest thing that came away from him, or why people have, a lot of people have cooled on him, was just his testing numbers, right? Like, he was just incredibly average athletically. And that, to a lot of people, is what the issue is more than anything else, I think, at this point.
Marshall's Mike Green, the most productive pass rusher in college football, with 17 sacks last season, 6'3", 251. Arms not as long at just under 32 inches, but strong. Posted the 28 bench press reps, and while he didn't do his testing, you can tell from the way he plays, athleticism is not a problem. But one of the highlights of the Senior Bowl practice week, he seems like a perfect match as well for the Cardinals in terms of his ability and what the Cardinals need. It comes down, is Monty Austin Fort going to draft Marshall in the first round?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question, and there's other things that
There is an off the field thing with his dismissal from his last stop. We won't go into that because we don't know, but that could take them off the board as well. I'm going to think. Would you say that there's perhaps two other players that might be in the first round mix next? Like I've got, James Pierce, Tennessee, Nick Scouton. I haven't seen nearly as much lately in the first round, but is it possible for Donovan Izioraku to, because of the testing numbers, to jump into the first round, or is he ultimately going to be a day two guy?
I think he'll jump into the first round because it's hard to find guys that athletic that have put up the numbers that he did. I mean, you mentioned production. Obviously, Mike Green is the top guy, but Izioraku is number 2, right? Like
16 and a half compared to Mike Green's 17. So there you go. And he had good games against good teams. He did the testing. Fantastic. 6.943 cone, didn't run the 40. My guess is it would be better than average. And so you got production. Is the level of competition enough for Monty Ossenfort to pull the trigger? Like what we don't have him drafting anyone outside the SEC or the Big Ten in the first 2 rounds yet. So but until we see it happen, we have a pattern right now.
Right, exactly. And that's the question we have is will Monty stray outside of that? The other guy that we have to mention that could go in the first round, but I think he was out of Daniel Jeremiah's first round, but I could be misspeaking. There was a big draft nick that just dropped a mock and had James Pierce Jr. out of the first round.
Yeah. That's like, I think like he's in first round sometimes, but I've also seen him drop out of that one as well. But he isn't he kind of like a little bit of like he's got the like 6'5", 245, almost 33-inch arms, a 4.474. Like there's a lot to like, but doesn't it feel like he's kind of an enigma around draft talk right now?
Yeah, I think it's because there were some unflattering things said by staffers at Tennessee about him. And anytime a school doesn't put out a glowing report, especially on a kid, because again, one of the Bama tools outside of paying people under the table during the Saban era, right, was like they always had all the all pros and the Pro Bowlers and Super Bowl ring guys that they showed off and the guys that were first and second round picks. And so it's really weird for a school not to super embrace a guy like James Pierce Jr. And that's all we know, right? Like
he did lead the SEC with 10 sacks in 2023. That's nothing to sneeze at by any means. He had an interception, 52-yard interception return for a touchdown. He's had double-digit tackles for losses the last 2 years. So, I mean, I'd be comfortable at number 16 with I'll be honest, I'm least comfortable with Shamar Stewart, but that's because there's other guys that I think you can bet on more. And Jalen Walker, that's for me. Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, James Pierce Jr. I think those guys are easier bets in terms of your first round lottery ticket.
Well, and you look at it, and those are the first round guys, right? And then you even mentioned a couple guys like Donovan Izioraku might sneak into the first round. Nick Scorton's a name to watch. I mean, this is a guy that as a 19-year-old at Purdue had a fantastic season, and then he transferred to Texas A&M and played in their stupid defense and went from a 10-sack guy to a 5-sack guy. And people will be like, oh, well, yeah, because he went to the SEC, he went to a real, football school. It's like, no, you don't have 3 guys projected to be NFL draft picks, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scrouton, and Shamar Taylor, and not be able to produce. Like that's either coaching or that scheme. And I think so much of it for Scrouton was scheme, because man, he was just such a revel. I mean, this dude's not going to be 21. Think about this, Jess. This dude won't be 21 until August. And
that's fun.
And
That's fun.
as a straight up 19-year-old in the Big Ten playing at Purdue, he put up 10 sacks, and he was a pure outside linebacker at Purdue. And then he went over, and you look at where he lined up, right? So this is a dude that lined up outside at Purdue a bunch. He lined up majority outside at A&M, but 150 of his 550 snaps were inside the box. So like either head up on the last guy on the line or even more interior than that. And you're like, what are we doing with a guy that just had 10 sacks? So that's, my take on this Scarton thing. I like him. Landon Jackson's an interesting one.
Let's jump in. So coming up next on the Rise Up Secret podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk a little. Let's dive into the day 2 guys. Names to know on day 2. We won't go too much because we still want to have time to talk about the day 3 sleepers. That's coming up next on Rise Up Red.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
We're back on the Rise Up Secret podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the web, talking day 2 guys. Now, Nick Scourton, James Pierce, those might be day 2 guys. Let's talk guys that we really feel comfortable. Seth just brought up Landon Jackson. I think some names that you want to throw out there to know. Landon Jackson, Arkansas, testing numbers off the charts. You get the 2 Ohio State guys, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. And those 3 jump off the page for me in terms of day 2 guys. If after we talk about is Uraku and Pierce and Scourton.
And the last one, I would say there's 4. I would say there's 4 that I don't want to say locks because lock is a dumb word, but like I'd say there are 4 guys that feel very strongly to be a second round pick. You mentioned Jackson, Jack Sawyer, JTT, and then Princely Umanamilian from
yes, he's the other guy. Yes.
So those guys feel very second roundish to me, and that's what we were talking about the kickoff of the show, man. Is that this group? I really like Jalen Carter's game. I really like what Michael Williams did at Georgia and how well he did his job. On the field as a prospect, I'm a huge Mike Green fan. I'm a huge DE fan out of Boston College. Okay, so all of those guys. But I don't feel like any of those guys are guaranteed to be tiers better than a guy like Jack Sawyer or JTT or Princely, because that's how like balanced this class is for me. And so you start with Landon Jackson, right? Back-to-back 6.5 sack seasons in the SEC at Arkansas. Arkansas obviously not your prototypical big-time SEC program. Last year they went 4-8, or sorry, 23. Anytime I say last year, I mean the year before the current year that they're playing in. But they went 4-8. This year they went 7-6. Landon Jackson put up 6.5 sacks in both seasons. Think about that. I mean, he's one of the few guys projected out of Arkansas to get drafted. So he's a guy that really had to do it on his own. You mentioned it. Freak athlete, came in at 6'6", 264, jumped out of the building, had a really, really good 40-yard dash. Didn't do agility testing. That they're getting away from that, unfortunately. But it shows up on screen. He's a guy I feel like, could be the type of player that just, is a 5 to 7 sack a year guy for the next, 8 to 10 years. And so yeah, he never hits it big, right? Like he might pop to a 10 sack season, but he could be a guy like a Josh Sweat. He could be that good for that long and be a guy that is really, a really positive impact and impactful player on a number of teams. So that's kind of how I look at him. Jack Sawyer, the biggest drawback is just his build. I mean, he's kind of a short-armed mauler. But I've talked about it before. He really is, and I know this is just, these are the cop-out cheap comparisons, but he really does, like, he's really on that Sam Hubbard to Trey Hendrickson kind of scale. Like, at worst, he's going to be like a Sam Hubbard type, and that's a good NFL player. Right. That's a guy that retired on his own. Like, he didn't get forced out. It wasn't like people were like, oh, you got to go. He dealt with some injuries last year, but he was an average, until last year. This is a guy that averaged 6 sacks a season. And
you get that from a second round, and you feel great because you get a pass rush in the first round. You feel like you want 8+, like every year, right? It makes that maybe rookie. You're 8+, but you go to round 2, if you're getting 5+, you're like, that's good value.
That's excellent value, and that's why I said that, because none of these guys outside of Green and DE, and you mentioned Pierce 1 year, but like none of these guys did that consistently at big schools, right? So like Jalen Walker 6.5, like, and so am I taking a chance on missing out on a gem? You always are. That's the draft. But guys like Sawyer, JTT, they just feel like they're going to be locked into 5 to 7 sacks a year for a decade, and you're never going to have to worry about that pass rush too. Then the name that I come back to is Sawyer a lot, and I wanted to throw this comp out at you. Marcus Golden. Kind of that bulldog, Energizer Bunny mentality. Doesn't look, I mean, obviously he's an NFL player, so he looks fantastic, but doesn't look like your prototypical pass rusher, right? Like, he doesn't have the long arms. He isn't the explosive off the line type of guy, but he's going to work and work and work. And so that's what I've thought about him. JTT,
do you like him more than Tuimoloau?
They're tough to really separate. JTT's built a little better, right? And then obviously he had the run down the stretch. I mean, what do you have? 5 sacks in the playoffs? Like, this dude was just the most dominant force down the playoffs. Had a incredibly special season at Ohio State, coming back for his senior year. And finally lived up to the hype of being, a top 10 recruit in the country. And remember, him and Sawyer came in together. So like, that was the expectation every year. But yeah, I think I prefer Sawyer just because if this makes sense, it's slightly easier to scout, right? Like, I kind of feel like I know what the bottom is for Sawyer. I know what the top is as well, and I doubt I'm going to get Trey Hendrickson, but I'm comfortable if I get Sam Hubbard, right? And
Makes
if
sense.
that bottom is a little, like I said, like a Marcus Golden, that's fine. JTT probably has a higher ceiling. He probably does, because we're talking about, a guy that came in at 6'4" in the 270s, has longer arms, a little more explosive athletically, and then like I said, finished his college career in an unbelievable fashion. But where was that for 3.5 years?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, so that's the problem. Princely Umanamora. I think I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. That's okay.
Million.
Million. Here's my thing with Princely. I think, again, he's a guy that I would be like, I would really like him in the third round. I would be okay with him in the second round. I don't love him in the second round. And the reason why is he was a guy that he had that 7-sack season at Florida his senior year, and then he came back as a super senior and had a great year, 10.5 sacks. But again, kind of like JTT, it's like, where was that consistently, right? 2 sacks, 1.5 sacks, 4.5 sacks, 7 sacks. So that was his real draft. And then, you're 23 going on 24-year-old playing against all these guys, and you come out and now you're a dominant player, right? Why wasn't that more consistent? That'd be my question with him. The two other guys I'll mention real quick, Braden Swinson out of LSU and Josiah Stewart, both guys that will probably go in the third round, might sneak into the back end of the second, but probably third round guys. Those are guys that I think are going to come in and be like consistent, 4 to 6 sack guys.
Coming up next on the Rise of Sea Red podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's wrap this show up talking about some day 3 guys worth knowing. That's coming up next on Rise of Sea Red.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Back on the Rise of Sea Red podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Day 3 guys. Athletically, if I'm looking at one guy that you haven't mentioned, and I haven't, let me pull up the production. But if you look at the athleticism, it would be Jordan Birch out of Oregon. 3 years at South Carolina, then 2 years at Oregon. Had the big jump in production this last season, 8.5 sacks. And you look at the athletic, 6'4", 279, 33-inch arms, 4'6", 740. Is he going to be like? Wouldn't that be a really good day 3 selection if he's around then?
Yeah, I've seen that he's pushing into that day 2, like that middle day 2. So like mid to late third type of thing. And you're right. That would be ideal. I mean, and this is a guy, again, you go, where was even last year at Oregon, where was the production, man? Like, the other thing is this year, just like, he did the 8.5 sacks in 10 games. So he didn't even play a full season.
That's wild.
And so it's wild to think this dude doubled his career sack total in one season in 10 games after playing 48 games before that and having 8 career sacks. Like, that's the question on Birch, is because, like you said, the testing, the size, the athletic, like, why wasn't there more consistency? We talked about JTT. JTT was consistent. He had 4 to 5 sacks a year every year, and then popped to 12.5. This guy was 1, 3.5, 3, like, and then 8.5. Where were the sacks before this year? And why? And again, 2 different systems, South Carolina and Oregon. You averaged about 3 sacks a year, and then all of a sudden you went off for 8.5. Where was that before? That's my concern with him. But I'm not gonna care too much about it. I think he's a talented guy. If he's there in that 80, those 80 picks, he's a good one. The one I really want to talk about is David Walker out of Central Arkansas. This is a guy that is on a lot of radars for a reason, man. He is a talented dude. The question is, and what you always have to ask yourself is, how do you separate a guy playing at the lower levels from his competition? Now, the one thing I'll say is Walker exceeded his competition. I mean, this is a guy that was a standout at Central Arkansas. So there was no question when he stepped on the field, he was the best player. He's got a really oddly shaped body, first off, right? Like, you're talking about a guy that's 6'1", 263 pounds, under 32-inch arms, but he tested fairly well. I mean, not great by any means, but tested well. And so when you look at David Walker on day 3, you really like what you see. If you can get him in round 5, you're like, okay, I want to take this chance. If you have to take him before that, you have to answer those questions about David Walker, right? Like, you have to answer the questions of, are you comfortable with his size, with his body, with his length, before you make that call, because he's a really interesting cat, and I like his game quite a bit. Again, I throw out Marcus Golden with guys like this that maybe, and he's a little more athletic than Golden was, but I see a guy that has questions, but has upside and has shown to be dominant at his level. And that's what you asked from those guys. We talked about Zion Johnson a couple years ago and why we were interested in him, and it's because he was moving up in levels and playing at higher levels. And that's ultimately what you want to see from these guys at the lower level. Walker didn't make the jump, but he played well. Another guy, whose name I'm going to butcher, Olawafemi Oladejo from UCLA. He came in, decent numbers, not great by any means.
He's a guy that has upside because he was playing off the ball and moved to the edge late in his career so that Schweisinger could play.
Correct. And what happened was you had a guy that was just learning how to do things, and he had 13.5 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks on a bad UCLA team. So you're talking about a guy that is a day 3 prospect that really fits the mold and fits the size. I mean, 6'3", 260, over 33-inch arms, like had a 36.5-inch vert and 10-inch broad at the combine, and really looks like the type of guy that's going to fit in. Last guy we'll mention, because there's with these guys, there's probably 100 that we could talk about, right? But we'll mention him, Jaw Joyner, the Minnesota edge rusher. Obviously, we want to mention Jaw because of his tie-in.
The connection. Yeah, the Coach Debo, Cardinals' new defensive line coached the D-line over at Minnesota, so they will have an in as to inside the locker room what they think of him. All came out pretty good athletically. I want to throw out there a guy that is going to probably be a day 3 pick, BYU's Tyler Batty. He's a big body, 6'5", 270. Didn't have massive production, but you know what he did this last year? Made a lot of plays, interceptions. He had a sack and a half. He had a career high of 5.5. I think he's a day 3 guy that probably would be fun to watch.
And he's really big, man. I mean, 6'6", 270. So he's more like a base end, and that'll be what it's to watch and see how he does with that, because he's a guy that could be a rotational base end that has like you said, a little playmaking ability in him, but you're probably not going to expect like huge leaps from him.
Victor Dimukeje playing special teams. I think it probably what you get, but like the Cardinals got 4 full years out of Victor Dimukeje. So if you get 4 full years playing special teams and a few defensive snaps out of a guy like Tyler Batty, you feel real good.
Exactly.
And with that, since Seth's got to go, he's got to go do some coaching stuff. We will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up Seared podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the web. We'll be back next week talking about the defensive line and the offensive line in our 2 shows. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we will be back again soon.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, rise up, see red.
Rise up! Rise up! Rise up! Rise up!
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.